Hi everyone, I'm Dr. Matt Cahow. Welcome to the channel. And in this video, I wanted to do an analysis of one of Bach's chorales. I've chosen BWV 269. I'm not sure how far I'll get into it, maybe through the first phrase or maybe the whole thing. It's not actually that long, but we'll see how it goes. I'm going to start by playing the audio so you can hear what it sounds like. The score's in front of you, and here it is. All right, great. So let's get into it here. Got the score in front of you. I'm going to focus on the first 8 bars or so, the first phrase, 7 measures, and we'll see how it goes. Starting off, we've got 1 sharp in the key signature, so we're either in G major or E minor. The very first chord is a G chord, so let's just assume we're in G major. That's probably a pretty safe bet. So the first chord here, from low to high, you've got G, B, and then a D and another G on top. So we've got a G chord, a 1 chord, and that's in root position, so we're okay there. In the next measure, just looking through the whole thing, it looks like you've got a chord changing on every beat, or maybe a chord usually changing on the first beat, and then also you oftentimes have this rhythm here, like the half note going to a quarter note. So we've got like a half note chord, and then on the third beat, a lot of the measures, you've got another chord. So the harmonic rhythm is either 1 chord per beat or maybe 2 chords per measure. So we'll see how it goes. Now, we've got the first chord of the piece. I also think it's useful to look at the places where you've got fermatas. Those are oftentimes cadential points and they're landmarks. So you're going to expect, I think typically you're going to have either a tonic chord or a dominant chord in a lot of these fermata spots. And let's see what we have here. In this one up here at the end of the first line, that's a 5 chord. It's a D chord, D in the bass, octave here in the tenor voice, and the F sharp and A on top. So we've got a dominant chord there. At the end of the first phrase, we've got another 1 chord. It's actually the exact same chord, same voicing as the very beginning. So that makes sense. Into the B section, you've got at the end of the second line, that's another 5 chord. Surprise, surprise. Okay, so I think the fermatas are useful to look at. So we've got this, tonic dominant thing happening, and that's to be expected. So let's get into the first full measure here. On the first beat, it's another 1 chord. He's just thrown the bass voice up an octave. So still 1. And then on the second beat here, we've got an E in the bass, C, E. And then on top here, you notice the G's a half note, so the G's carrying over here. So what you have from low to high is E, C, E, and then a G on top. Well, that's a C chord, which is a subdominant chord, a 4 chord in the key of G. So this is a 4 chord. The fact that the E's in the bass, that means the chord is in first inversion because the E is functioning as the third of the chord. So your figured bass numbers, that's going to be a 6. The reason it's 6 is because now from E up to C, that's a 6. And so in first inversion chords, what happens is you get the interval of a 6th at some point when you voice it. And so that's where that whole notational thing comes from, okay? The next note here, this B, this is going to be a passing tone because it doesn't fit with a 4 chord, and it's passing from C down to B and then down to A in the tenor voice on the third beat. And then, not too surprisingly, on the third beat of this measure, what is that? Well, that's a 5 chord, D, F sharp, and A. And Also, it's in first inversion because F sharp's in the bass. So this is a 5/6 thing happening, okay? And something about inversions. What's the reason for an inversion, at least in this music? Really what it is, I guess, yeah, I think in all, music, when you think of inversions, what's really happening is it's just going to make the voice leading easier, okay? Because in the case of this subdominant chord here, I'm going to erase this stuff so we can see this a little clearer. If you have the bass voice here drop down to a C, that's a leap of a fifth, and that's a lot harder to sing than going down by a minor third here. So the E just makes it a little bit more manageable for the performers typically, okay? And that's what an inversion is going to do. It's going to help in just realizing the music and making the lines more smooth instead of having these big interval leaps, okay? All right, so my writing's getting a little big here. I need to shrink this stuff a little bit. Let's see if I can make this a little bigger here. There we go, that's better. Okay, so on the third beat here, that was a 5 chord in first inversion. On the first beat of this next measure, well, that's a 1 chord. G in both the tenor and the bass voice. That's why the stems are going both directions. Okay, it's like the two voices are colliding, or they're singing the same note. They're singing unison. And then up here, the D, that's a half note going through. So it's going to keep making sound. And then on top, we've got a B, which is the third of the chord, okay? And then on the second beat, looks like a 5 chord. We've got D and then F sharp, D above that with a half note, and then the B on top, what that's going to function as, it doesn't fit in a 5 chord. We need to get to an A. Well, the A is here. What happens is this B hangs over. It suspends the chord, okay? And so this is a suspension, and it would be a 6/5 suspension because B would be a 6th above the note D, and then it drops down to the 5th of the chord here. So that's what how this B that I've circled, or yeah, the B, the dotted quarter note, that's how that note functions here on the second beat. It's suspending the chord for a second before it resolves to the A, 8th note. So here's a 5 chord, and that's in root position. And then on the third beat, what do we have? Well, we have from low to high, we have an E, G, B, and G. Well, what's that? Well, that's an E minor chord, and that's a 6 chord in the key of G major. So we have 6 chord here, and it would be in root position because E's in the bass, okay? Hope we're doing okay so far. On the first beat of the next measure, what do we have? Well, this looks like a 4 chord again. We've got C chord, C, E, G. So this is 4. It's in root position. These 8th notes, what are these going to be functioning as in both the alto and the tenor voice? What's happening here is, let's go to the second beat and see what this this harmony is here. That looks like, what can we do here? We could do, I'm going to call that an A minor chord right here on the second full beat. And we'll talk about why here in a second. So A minor, what is that? Well, that's a 2 chord. Okay. And we get the A here, and so that's going to be a chord tone. So it's going to be in root position. This B here would function as a passing tone because it's passing from a chord tone through to the chord tone here, A, okay? The C in the tenor voice, that's a part of the chord, it's a third of the chord. And then here, this G dotted quarter note, it's ringing through. So we'd actually call this like a 2/7 chord. The G could function as the 7th of the chord, and then you get the A here, which is going to be a chord tone. And these notes here, the circle notes, these are going to be neighbor tones. They're neighboring chord tones. So NT here, I know I'm just getting sloppy, NT. Both of these in the alto and tenor voice, these 8th notes, those are going to be neighbor tones. So hope that makes sense. And then let's see. Let me clean some of this up again. This does get a little crazy. Let's see. All right, on the third beat, what do we have there? Okay, well, that's a 1 chord. The G in the bass, and then you've got a GBD thing happening. The root is doubled. So it's a 1 chord. And then finally we get to 5 here, okay? So we've got, this progression where we get a lot of tonic dominant happening, we get subdominant in here, then eventually we get to a 5 chord at the first fermata. Let me finish up the rest of the section here. We're now on the third beat of this fermata measure here. What do we have? Well, that's a 1 chord, G, B, D. Okay, and then let's see. Let me move my face over on this side here so we can see this. On the first beat of this last measure of the first line, what is this? Well, we've got octave Fs, and then we've got a D and F sharp because of the key signature. Oops, D on top. So we've got another 5 chord here. There's no 5th in the chord, but that's okay. And then on the second beat, we've got a D hanging over here. So we need to include that as part of the harmony if we analyze it this way. So what do we have here? Well, from low to high, we've got a G, a B, an E, and then a D. So that would be an E minor 7 chord. And so that would be a 6 chord in the key of G. And it's a 6 chord. The G is in the bass. So that means this chord is in first inversion. And it's a 7 chord, right? So if you have a 7 chord in first inversion, the Roman numerals for that is 6, 5. Okay, so it's a 6, 6, 5 chord. Okay, or it's a E minor 7 chord with the G in the bass, if that's a little easier for you. And then the last beat of this measure, what do we have here? That looks like we've got F sharp here in the alto voice, C on top, another C here, and then an A below that. That's an F sharp diminished chord. That's a 7 chord in the key of G. So this is going to be a diminished 7 chord or a diminished chord. There's no 7th in it, but it's the 7 chord in the key. So we have a 5, 6, 7, and so almost guaranteed on the downbeat of measure 6, this is going to be a 1 chord. Okay, and yep, that is a 1 chord. I'm not crazy. Okay, so 1 chord here, and then we have a B in the bass, so that means first inversion, so that's going to be Roman numeral 1 and figure bass number 6. And then on the second beat here, what is that? C, E, A on top. Okay, and then we've got this G hanging over here. Okay, so what's happening here? Well, if you add the G to this chord on the second beat, that's going to be an A minor 7 chord. Yeah, we can do that. So what is an A minor chord in the key of G? It's a 2 chord. So A minor 7, so it's a 2. Roman numeral 2, it's minor, so we make it lowercase. And it's a 7 chord, but we've got a C in the bass, so that means first inversion, and so that's going to be also a 6-5 thing, okay? And let's see. Yeah, and that looks fine. Then finally, on the last beat of this measure, what do we have? We've got a D, D. Yeah, this is a 5 chord. Not surprising. What do we have? We have a 1, 2, 5, 1 progression. So here's a 5 chord. Now we've got this note here doesn't function with the 5 chord, right? Like it's a 5 chord here is a D, F sharp, A thing. It's not what we have here. We've got this B. So this is a passing tone. Okay, because what do you have? You have a chord tone here, and you got this line passing through, okay? So this is a 5 chord, and it would be in root position because a D's in the bass, and the A here is hanging over through the third beat, and so that you get the fully realized 5 chord. The C, I guess, also here, this could be, this is the 7th of a 5 chord. Yeah, 7th of the 5 chord. So 5, 7 chord. Or you could also, depending on how you hear it, you could label this C here as also a passing tone. Either way, I think would work there. Well, yeah, no, I'll take that back. I think this should be, the C here should be the 7th of the chord. The reason why you don't want to have 2 passing tones in a row. Okay, you always want to go like passing tone, chord tone, passing tone, chord tone. If you get multiple passing tones in a row or neighbor tones, you're probably doing something a little funny in your analysis. Okay, and then finally, on this last chord here of this opening phrase, we get a 1 chord. So I think that'll be enough for now. I don't want to get the video like just crazy long. I will do the second phrase of this piece in the next video. But please feel free to leave me a comment, like the video, subscribe to the channel, share the video, and I'll see you next time.